All right, welcome back, boys and girls. Hopefully you got your attendance done, you had a nice little break, and you're ready for the reading table. All righty, let's go over our words to know. Our first word to know is have. Let's do our little chant. Give me an H. Give me an A. Give me a V. Give me an E. What's that spell? Have. Good job. In our sentence, I have one baby brother. Our second word, help. Let's do our chant. Give me an H. Give me an E. Give me an L. Give me a P. What's that spell? Help. Nice job. I help my mom draw. These words will be added to our words to know row after we finish this particular lesson. Alrighty, and looking at our letters, Larry Lion, which stands for the letter L, and a letter L makes what sound? Ugh. And we hear that sound in words like lip, left, and of course, lion. And then we have Willie Worm. And Willie Worm helps us to remember that the W makes what sound? W sound, as in wax, wet, and of course, Willie Worm. So those are our letters to know and our sounds to know. It's important to know our sounds because that way we can sound out words. We can blend and we can segment. Alrighty, speaking of that, we are going to be doing something different for our substituting. So we've been substituting sounds at the end, and we're going to do that. Let me move some of these papers out of the way so we don't get all kind of confused. All right, with our book. There we go. So we're focused on these pictures, and I'm going to give you a word, and then I'm going to tell you to change the sound at the end, and you're going to tell me which picture represents that word. Alrighty, so here we go. Our first word is run, and if I change the n sound in run to g, I would now have rug. Run, change the n to g, is now rug. All right, good job, boys and girls. All right, here's our next one. Ben. I have the word Ben, which is a name. And if I change the n sound in Ben to d, I now have, that's right, bed. I changed the n to d, and now I have bed. Alrighty, here's our next word. It's another name. Our name is Jack. And if I change the k sound, which by the way is made with my CK, if I change the k sound to I now have jam. Correct, jam. Jack. Change the k to I have jam. All right, here's the next one. I'm starting with the word mitt. Mitt. I change the t sound to x sound, and now I have that's right, I have mix. I changed the mit t sound to mix. All right, here's the last one. I have lot. Lot. And I changed the t to g. I now have log. Lot. Change the t to g, and it's log. All right, boys and girls, good job. I'm going to move those cards to the side. And we're going to do a little work with our verbs. Verb and subject agreement. Verb and noun agreement. Yep, Miss Jackson's looking for a pencil. Sorry. Go find one real quick. Okay, we'll use a marker. All right, here we go. So we're filling in the verbs, and I made a few changes on here just so that we can have some with friends and some with not. So we know if it's just one noun, if it's one person, one animal, one thing, one place, that the verb needs help. And so it needs to have the S. But if it's more than one, then it does not need the S. It doesn't need help. So our first sentence, I'm at Jaden and Jared blank many pets. This was not a good example, but it should say have many pets. This was not a good example, but the right verb would be have, and have is for plural, two more than one. If it was just one, it would say has. All right, let's go to the next one. Mike blank running at 6 a.m. These are all our verbs, and I'll just help us along by telling you Mike starts running at 6. So does Mike need the S? Yes, Mike does need the S. So Mike starts running at 6 because Mike is all by himself. So he needs the S. All right, this is a sentence I changed. Nikayla and Nancy blank avocado into 4 pieces to make sandwiches. So the word is slices. So does Nikayla and Nancy need an S? No, they do not. Nikayla and Nancy slice. They don't need the S. Avocado into 4 pieces to make a sandwich. Because it's 2 of them, so they don't need the S. All right. This next one, Mr. Haas blank me for change. Asks. He asks me for change. Does he need an S? Does Mr. Haas need an S? Yes, he does, because it's just him. So he asks me for change. All right. I added to this one. Namir and Lisa blank 6 miles to school. Walks is the right verb. Namir and Lisa, do they need the S? No, they don't, because it's 2 of them. So they walk 6 miles to school. I blank about my dream last night. And I think. This was not another one of those is not a good example because the verb itself doesn't follow suit, but the word is I think about my dream last night. And then last but not least, we have Andrea blank Tim her afternoon snack. The word would be gives. Andrea gives. Would she need the S? Yes, she would, because it's just Andrea. She's the only one that's giving her snack. So Andrea gives Tim her afternoon snack. So, although there were a couple of bad examples here, the main point is if it's just a single a single noun, whether it's a person, place, thing, or animal, they need the S on the end. But if it's more than one person, then they do not need the S on the end of their verb. And that's it. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and read our story because it's not that long. And we can go ahead and get that over with. So here we go. I'll open up to the right story. That was our story from yesterday. So let me get to the story for today. Wow, more pages than I thought. Here we are. My cross-country trip. Alrighty, and we see this family. And the blue line shows the directions, that they went, how they went. They started here. This is the West Coast, and they made it all the way over here to the East Coast. And the red dots indicate the places that they stopped at. All right. And that's the family right there. So let's take a look. We have to drive across the country to visit Granny in Oregon. What a fun trip. We will send her postcards of places we see. Okay, so they actually started here and ended up here because Oregon is in the West Coast. So they started in the East Coast and they went to the West Coast. Just the opposite. We see the Statue of Liberty. We know that's here in New York. Empire State Building. That's in the New York area, New York, New Jersey area. And it says here, from New York City. Dear Granny, we just got to New York City. The Empire State Building is really tall. Tomorrow we take a boat to the Statue of Liberty. Love, Katie. And this is a postcard. A postcard usually has pictures on the front of it, like we see here. And on the back of it, you just write a little note saying, wish you were here, or this is where we are, or we visited this place. It's just a little note. So we're seeing them travel across the country through the postcards that they sent to the grandmother. And we see the White House and the Washington Monument. That tells me automatically that they are in Washington, D.C., from Washington, D.C., because the White House, the president, lives in Washington, D.C. Dear Granny, today we are in Washington, D.C. We are going to see where the president lives. Then we'll go see the Washington Monument. Love, Katie. And what you see over here is the address of her grandmother. And that's the same on both because she's always addressing all of the postcards to the granny. Also, we take note that there has to be a stamp on the postcard. She's using different kinds of stamps, but they all are stamps that have to be on the postcards. Centennial Olympic Park. And this is from Atlanta, Georgia, when the Olympics were there in Atlanta, Georgia. Dear Granny, we got to Atlanta this morning. We are going to spend the day in the Centennial Olympic Park. They had the Summer Olympics here. Love, Katie. And we talked about that. And you can see the circles, the famous 5 circles from the Olympics. There are there as well. Again, the stamp and the address to Granny. Mississippi River from Memphis, Tennessee. Dear Granny, today we drove across the Mississippi River. It is wider than any river back home. It took us forever to get across the bridge. And we see, can we see the bridge? Yes, I don't know if you can really see it, but there's a bridge going across the Mississippi River. Yet another stamp. And the address to Granny. Taos, from Taos, New Mexico. Dear Granny, now we are in New Mexico. We visited a pueblo today. I got to help a woman make bread. And that's probably maybe the woman that she helped. Maybe. Love, Katie. All right, here we are. Grand Canyon. The famous Grand Canyon. And that is in Arizona, from Grand Canyon, Arizona. Dear Granny, today we saw the Grand Canyon. It is really deep. There is a river way down at the bottom. Love, Katie. And here's the Grand Canyon. See how deep it is? There's the river she was talking about. Another stamp. The Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco, California. Dear Granny, we just went across the Golden Gate Bridge. We could see the Pacific Ocean. We'll be at your house tomorrow. I can't wait to see you. Love, Katie. So remember, the Pacific Ocean is on the west coast. We live near an ocean as well, but it is the Atlantic Ocean. And the Pacific Ocean is much bigger than the Atlantic Ocean. And that's our story of going across country. So many things were happening there. We saw family time in that story, and the children were spending time with each other in the story. And that was the same in our story, 1 of 3, where the sisters spent time together. And they did travel a little bit. They traveled by car or taxi. They also traveled by train. And this family is traveling, but they're traveling just by car. But they're crossing bridges, and they're not going underground. That's different. They're not going underground because the girls on the subway went underground. And they are visiting a lot of places. The girls, even though they didn't go far, they visited some places as well. The bakery. They visited the flower shop. And someplace where they went when they were in a taxi. They went someplace. So the stories are the same in the fact that families are visiting different places. Of course, this family is traveling a lot further than the sisters traveled. They both did use cars because a taxi is a car, but the sisters did use a train as well. And again, we see families spending time with each other. So those are some of the things that are same and different in our 2 stories. All right, boys and girls, I think that's it for today. Make sure that you have taken Chapter 10 tests because we're going to be moving right along tomorrow. Chapter 11 test. We'll be moving right along to Chapter 12 tomorrow, and we'll be finishing up. We should be finished by next Tuesday, and we should be all done with all of our reading and all of our math by next week. All right. And talk to you soon, boys and girls.